All right, welcome to North Tropics. We are planting sorghum again. This is the Dale variety. It's a really tall, sweet sorghum. It can get about 15 feet or more tall. Mine didn't get quite that tall this year, but I did have a couple issues arise. I am planting in double rows. I did the rows about 2 feet apart, and then the close double rows about maybe 6 or 8 inches apart. Put them about half-inch deep in, some well-prepared weed-free soil. Covered them up. You can plant it about like corn. I don't think I will do the double rows again, just because we had a pretty serious drought. And although the sorghum didn't have any trouble surviving it, it did hurt my yields. I am putting just some organic granular fertilizer on top and tapping that down. Anything with nitrogen, the sorghum will need it, and that helps out a lot. After a couple months, here you can see it did get pretty tall, but the weeds overtook it pretty quickly. I did put some of these mesh bags over the seed heads to keep the birds off of them, so that way I can I'm going to try eating some of the seeds. I'll see how they taste. It's probably not a great variety for eating the seeds, but I'll at least save some for replanting next year. Once the seeds are about ready, I did squeeze a few. You can see some of the unprotected ones. The birds got to pretty good. Once the seeds are kind of too hard to get my thumb through, I know they're dried up and ready to harvest. So at that point, I did start pulling off all the leaves. You don't really want to get the leaves going through your juicer. They will give kind of a bitter taste. It was a lot of work pulling off all these leaves, especially in this mess I had here. Another thing that kind of hurt my yield this time was the couple times it did rain, it was quite a windstorm and knocked over some of the plants and just made a tangled mess. But I am cutting down the whole stems, just using these loppers. You could use a machete or anything like that. Last year I used just a cheap auger style juicer, and that required me to peel and cut the little sections of sorghum to get it to go through the juicer. I'm not doing this year. I did buy a proper sugarcane press, and I'll be using that going forward. It worked out pretty well for me. After getting most of the leaves off and the stems cut down, I cut the seed heads off and just collected them for later. And then I'll have to go back through all those seed heads and pull them out of the little bags, which was quite a chore. And then I got to wash all those little bags and get rid of the whatever pollen and chaff and bugs and whatever else is in there, so I can reuse those bags next year. But I use these little bags. I got a bunch of them really cheap. They work good to protect fruit. I use them on all my figs and any kind of special fruit that I want to protect from the birds or anything else. Here you can see me putting together the little mesh filter of the cane press. This will kind of filter out any pulp or fiber that tries to get through. That's your little chute where the pressed stems come out. And then that little catch tray has a spout that screws into it, and I just put that over a big pan, which ended up being the perfect size to catch all the juice. And then I employed some child labor to crank the press to get those stems through, and here you can see it just starting to drip. It is a lot of work to get that thing to spin, but it's not too bad. It's geared really low, so it doesn't take a lot of force to twist it. And actually you can shove a lot more stems through than just one at a time. especially with some of the sorghum stems I had that were so thin. So here I shoved through about 5 or 6 at a time, and it didn't have any trouble squeezing them. It was just a lot of cranking. I collected all the juice, and here you can see the stems come out really dry, so it pressed it pretty well. And I ended up filling that that pan perfectly full. There you can see all the fiber and foam and sludge that mesh kept out. And I ended up pouring all the juice back through that strainer, because working outside I did get some little pine needles and stuff falling into my juice. And I let that juice set overnight in the refrigerator, and all the slime, that sludge that settled to the bottom, I'll pour that off and not keep it. I think they say it's mostly calcium, which you can use that, dump it around your plants as a little bit of a fertilizer. And then I just washed that out and put the juice back in there in my pressure cooker. I just cooked it with the lid off. This crock pot pressure cooker has a brown saute function that you can boil things with the lid off. Got it up to heat pretty quickly. I did do that outside just because I don't want all that steam in the house. Cooked for a couple hours. I stirred it from time to time until some foam started forming on top, and used the back of a wooden spoon or sometimes the inside of a wooden spoon to scoop off all that foam and sludge and whatever else gets to the top. I've never really done it any other way, but they say if you don't scoop that foam off, it'll kind of leave off tastes in your syrup, so skimming it off really improves the quality of your syrup. And I just kept it boiling for a couple hours. We had a nice breeze going, so that really helped get some of the water off to dry it out pretty well. Cook it into a really thick syrup. I will leave a link in the description if you want to check out one of those sugarcane presses or those juicers. Pretty much all the platforms sell them though, so I would shop around a little bit between eBay, Amazon, AliExpress, and wherever to try to find the best price. I'm sure they're all about the same, made in the same factory, but they work really good for kind of small scale sorghum syrup production. And you can even get a motor to attach to it if you kind of want to step up your production level. Here you can see it starting to change, and at that point I started checking its temperature. They say about 225 Fahrenheit is what you want to cook it to make sure you get a good thick syrup. And you can use a candy thermometer. Here I'm just using this cheap laser thermometer. But you can, if you've ever cooked candy or anything like that, you'll know what you're doing. You can probably just go by the look of it. But at that point I turned it off and decided it was ready, and let it cool for just a few minutes. I did put some hot water in this jar just to kind of warm up the jar to make sure I didn't crack it. And turned out really good this year. Definitely better than last year. It was a lot better taste, and I cooked it a little bit thicker this time too. Make sure you subscribe for more. I've got a lot more sorghum related content. My next video is going to be about cooking some of this sorghum seed, seeing how that turns out.